If faith alone is enough, why do Christians rely so much on personal experiences? And if those experiences prove God, then why do people in every religion have the same ones, or even atheists? Welcome back to Answers from Genesis. I'm Jen, and as always, I'm joined by Alan Bondar as we continue our series on Addicted to God. So last time we kind of looked at the idea that personal experience is enough proof that God exists. But if religious experiences are so powerful, why do believers in every faith report them? And if faith is supposed to be enough, why does Christianity need experiences at all? So today we're going to kind of look at these contradictions at the heart of the Christian belief. Faith alone versus experience. And then we're going to break down some psychological reasons behind these religious feelings. Why do you feel like you are experiencing God? And does that make it true? So, Alan, remind us briefly about your book before we get started here.
It's called How to Kill God the Easy Way. It's kind of providing the outline that Jen and I are talking about. So many things happening here on this show that you're never going to find in the book, and vice versa, because we're just kind of going off and doing what we do here. So I encourage you to, if you be a part of the series, also grab the book, read it, because it's written in a format to actually do a deconstruction process for your mind. So I would highly encourage you to grab that and read it from Amazon.
Okay, and the link can be found below. So let's get started with our 30 minutes here. Now, Alan, in the last episode, we were talking about some of the reasons why Christians would say that their experience is proof that God exists. And we ended on something that was really the God of the gaps. And that's where if they don't know, if something happens that they cannot explain, then the answer is always God. And so we talked about that quite a bit at the end of the last episode. But you had something that you wanted to add to that, Ellen. Let's start with that.
Yeah, I had lost my train of thought. For some reason, I couldn't bring it back, but then it came to me after the show. But I think one of the reasons, or the primary reason, why God fills the gaps in people's mind is because I think as humans, we don't like being uncomfortable. The discomfort of not knowing is unsettling. And so we have to know. We have to figure it out. There has to be an answer. And so when we don't know the answer, we need to make one happen. And so God fits the bill. Sounds good. Surely God can be the answer for all this. So abracadabra, it's God. Instead of saying, you know what, I don't feel comfortable with where I'm at. I don't know the answer. And that's really hard. And it really sucks. But you know what? I'm not just going to make something up. Because making something up isn't necessarily the truth. It just means you made something up. So God isn't necessarily the truth. He might be. I mean, maybe. It's a possibility. But it's yet to be proven that he is. I see no evidence for it whatsoever. You have no grounds to make that a logical leap. No grounds whatsoever to say it's God, other than a previous belief that you already think God exists. And so you just make that a logical leap. Well, if I don't know the answer, it must be God. No, it doesn't have to be God either. It could be a million other possibilities, Jen, as you were saying at the end of last episode. It could be the infamous flying spaghetti monster, for crying out loud. Like, we don't know. It could be any number of possibilities. It could be things we have never encountered yet or have not even come close. There could be an answer on the other side of one of our black holes sitting there. As soon as we get through it, we'll find it and be like, in another universe is the answer. We don't know. And if we don't know, we can't just make it up and think that that's the truth. It just isn't. So we have to find a way to become comfortable with saying, I don't know. It's okay to theorize. It's okay to say, this is a good option. This is a good probability. This is a good possibility. But to bank your entire life on a book with instructions for how you are supposed to live, provided by this God that you're not sure exists, you're just kind of guessing that he could be a great possibility, you're really going to live like that? you're going to do everything according to this rule book based on a hunch? I'm sorry. I'd rather live by what I do know rather than what I don't know. And what I don't know, I'm not going to try to live based on that. I can't. So I'm only going to base on the things that I do, that I'm confident that I know. And that's it. Because I only have this one life and I'm not going to waste it, living for some conclusion that I'm just guessing at because I don't have a better option.
So I think that it can be even more serious living in this place of God of the gaps. And so let me explain. I think that the I don't know position is one of the hardest things to be in our life. And so one of the things that I have done is I do divorce coaching sometimes. And people don't know what to expect. And that's very, very, very hard place to be in. And they don't know what's going to happen and what might happen and how is it going to, all this kind of stuff. And so I try to help them to see one step ahead and to see, okay, if I understand that this is how it's going to be, then I can make decisions. But with Christians, what they do with this God of the gaps theory is they get to a place where they don't know. And instead of actually taking action, then they just say God. So, for example, maybe they have a health issue, and they just my sister, she had tons and tons of health issues, and she would just say, "Well, I just trust that that God's going to heal me." And she said that, I don't know, for 20 years every day until she died at 57. And instead of there were a lot of things that she could have done for her health. There were a whole lot. But what she did was she covered it up with this God of the gaps. And she just said, I don't know, therefore God. And she trusted that God was going to heal her. And of course, he did not. And this is not uncommon, right? Other situations that I have seen people say, they don't need to listen to political views when they are voting because God is going to lead them or tell them how to vote. And they're just going to listen to God. And so we literally have people out there voting because they think that God told them to vote for a certain person. And this affects the rest of us. This affects everybody, right? This is not a good position to be in. It's not just your personal little dream world that you're living in that you're like, oh, well, I think that God exists because, I had this experience. Sometimes this has far-reaching, rippling effects. My sister's family was devastated when she died that young because she didn't want to do anything but just trust God. So we see this happening in all different areas of life. And I think it's a horrible, horrible thing. So I don't think this is a minor thing that the answer is just always God. Think about this. If all of the scientists throughout the last 2,000 years, or even 2,500, if I go back, if they said that they didn't understand something that was happening, therefore it must be God, we would still be living in the dark, dark ages. There would be no electricity. There'd be no internet. There'd be no, indoor plumbing. There'd be no much of anything going on in today's world. We wouldn't have any modern day medicine. We wouldn't have any of the scientific things that we have found. We wouldn't know where thunder and lightning came from. We'd still be thinking God was up there throwing it out of heaven at us because we had done something wrong. We'd still be thinking all of these crazy, crazy, crazy ideas. But every single one of those people, they said, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. They didn't say, I don't know, therefore God. And if we think about it, if all the people who today say, I don't know, therefore God, if they took that God Band-Aid off and they applied themselves to actually finding out, how much could we find out and how much faster could we as a collective society, a collective consciousness, how much more could we grow if we didn't have this God of the gaps theory holding us back. These people are literally keeping us from growing as a universe, as a community, as humanity. Am I taking this too far, Alan?
No, three more. I make that very point in the book as well later on. So you and I are communicating the same thing. Like that's like I think if we just abandoned this whole need to defend the existence of God that we already previously presuppose exists because of our upbringing and brainwashing, just throwing out silly arguments like the five that we've seen here we're going to see the fifth one here in this episode, hopefully, if we can get to it. But if we can actually get all the brilliant minds that are trapped in the matrix, always trying to defend God, and get rid of that and actually let them live in real life and actually start applying their skills and their brains to science, my goodness, can you imagine what we could accomplish together? But yeah, no, I think there's so many brilliant minds that are trapped in Christianity or religion in general. If we can get them out, my goodness, we could advance so much faster. Totally agree.
Yep. And when I left Christianity, Alan, I really thought that was just going to be the end. I'm just going to shake the dust and walk away. And people started asking me questions, and they asked me questions I didn't know the answers to.
Right.
Well, now I'm not a Christian, so my answer can't be God. So now what do? Well, I can either say I don't know, or I can say it's not important to me, or I can actually get to studying. And I'm the type that can't just sit there and have I don't know be a good answer. I know some people they're fine with that. I'm not fine with that. So I am going to say that I am extremely grateful for the people who have made the AI products that we have now, that we have access to, because I have learned so much from saying, hey, ChatGPT, how does this work? I don't understand this. Explain this to me.
Yeah.
And I have had hundreds of conversations with ChatGPT about things that I do not understand, and it helps me to learn. And then I can start putting more pieces together from all the different things. And then I start reading more science books, and lots and lots and lots of science books. And there's probably lots that I still need to read, and history books. Oh my goodness, all the history books. Because if you're just reading the history of the Bible and you think it's history, it's actually not. But when you're reading that book and you don't actually understand the history surrounding it, you're getting it wrong, right? You don't understand the mythology surrounding it, you're getting it wrong. So I think that this is more serious than just, I don't know, therefore God. I take it very, very seriously. And this is probably one of the main reasons why I speak out against Christianity so much, because it does impact all of humanity when people just say, therefore God.
Yep. It affects you. It affects me. It affects our future kids. This is important. This is very, very important. And I am not, and I have somebody recently, your efforts to, make people stop believing in God, or how did they say it? Remove the brainwashing of believing in God or something like that. I don't know. Is not going to work. I was like, dude, I don't even believe God exists. So I'm not trying to. I can't remember how that conversation went, but it was something along those lines. I'm not trying to make people stop believing in God that does exist. I'm simply trying to help them see that God doesn't. Like that, and they're vastly different. Like, I'm not some evil guy out here trying to stop people from believing in the true God because I'm an asshole and I just don't want people to believe in God. No, I literally am trying to help you.
Yes.
I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to help the human race. Like, I care because you're trapped in a belief in something that isn't real. Like, so they're vastly different. I'm not an evil guy trying to get you to stop following God. I don't think God exists. I'm trying to stop you believing that it's real. Like, that's what I'm working on. So yeah. And to your point about ChatGPT, my goodness, I love chat. You're absolutely right. Like, I find myself sometimes even being like, in a silly way, not intentionally, but I just find myself whispering to him because I'm embarrassed about the question I'm asking. Because in the past I would have had to ask a friend and they'd be like, seriously, you don't know that? So now chat doesn't make fun of me. So I can just ask him anything. And I'm like, cool. There's no like blowback for this, and I get to learn things that I'm an idiot on, and I don't have to feel embarrassed about it. So yeah, I'm grateful for the people who created that too. And there's so much more to be created and invented, and technology to be advanced, and the science of how things work. Golly, man, if we could just get all of the Christians, because Jen, I meant it when I said earlier, Christians, there's so many brilliant guys out there, women too, like both, like it's crazy. And when I say you're brainwashed as a Christian, I'm clearly not calling you stupid or an idiot. I'm saying your mind is trapped in believing something because you've been taught to believe it and indoctrinated to believe it. I don't think you're an idiot. I think you have so much to offer. You're just stuck in the wrong place. Let's get you out of there so we can use your freaking brains. Like, that's what I'm saying.
So I want to put in one more plug for ChatGPT before we go on, because I want to make sure that we cover these 2 more sections in this episode. So if every Christian would start using ChatGPT to ask honest questions, I think that they might really be shocked at the answers that ChatGPT, the things that ChatGPT would give them to consider. Once in a while, I will use ChatGPT to help me with a comment on Facebook. Somebody asks a comment, and usually it's someone who's asked that same question over and over and over and over. And I'm like, help me answer this in a different way, right? And so I have noticed that there have been a couple of times where ChatGPT actually can say my thoughts, but in a better way. And I have had a couple people say, I've never thought about that before. And I'll bet that if Christians, I'm challenging Christians right now, if you were to take those questions, some of the questions that we're asking you on all of these shows, right? If you were to take some of these questions, it's not just us. Go ask ChatGPT or whoever it is you like, Grok, Perplexity, I don't care, Claude. Go ask them some of these questions. Now, if you ask them from a presuppositional perspective, like, I know that God exists, therefore give me proof, right? If you ask that, it's going to try and give you proof for that, but you have to ask honest questions, all right? So I'm just going to say we actually have the tools in today's world to understand all these things, and the answer never needs to be, I don't know, therefore God. Never. Not in today's world. We don't live in that world anymore. But let's go on. We've got 2 more things we need to discuss. So let's discuss what are the other reasons why people would feel like their experience is God? So you talked about, you talked about one of them last episode, Alan. What was it that you talked about? Do you remember?
Well, I talked about one, the discomfort. People don't like not knowing, so they have to attribute something. Then there's, the idea that, and I don't know if I mentioned this one, or if this is a new one, I can't remember, but there's the idea that whatever this experience is, I can't explain it, and if I can't explain it, then it must be a God thing, because if there's no explanation, then
it's the God of the gaps, right?
God of the gaps. But take that even a step further. It's not just that I can't explain it, but this event seems like it must be supernatural, because you don't see these things every day. It's got to be supernatural, and because it's supernatural, therefore it's God. So you make these illogical leaps because without an explanation, you've got to have something. And so we're back to the same old story over and over again. But, the biggest problem with Reformed epistemology, in my mind, because as I said last episode, all this apologetic does is verify to the individual that what they believe is true because their experience validates it. But it doesn't actually do the job of apologetics, because it does not help me know that your experience is valid. It only helps you believe your experience is valid. So I still need more than just your experience, unless you can teach me or tell me how to duplicate your experience so that I therefore could also experience God and, believe he's real. So this apologetic falls short dramatically of actually accomplishing its goal. But the bigger problem with it, in my opinion, is that it still adds to the gospel of faith alone. It's still saying, well, my experience is what makes me believe. Well, no, because if that's the case, then you're saying that you're adding something to faith alone. And Paul's gospel, according to Galatians, is that it's got to be his gospel only, faith alone. And if anybody adds to this, anything like evidence or experience, now you're adding to the gospel of faith that Paul proclaimed. So you're creating an inherent contradiction by adding this argument and saying that your experience is in addition to faith to help you believe the gospel. It just doesn't work. It's just like all the other apologetic methods. They're all adding something to faith. And really, if it's faith alone, it's faith alone. If it's faith plus evidence, well, now you're adding something to the gospel. And the problem with the evidence is that if God could be proven by evidence, then neither atheism nor biblical faith would exist. Because if I have the evidence, I don't need faith. I have it. And if I have evidence, I can't be an atheist because now you've convinced me. I've seen it with my own eyes. So if you actually did have evidence as apologists, if you actually did, and it was actually good evidence, as good as evidence is to prove that gravity exists, if you had that kind of evidence, literally there would be no atheists, and you also would not need faith. And so that in itself would be an inherent destruction of Christianity completely, because the whole view of Christianity is that it's based on faith alone. So I don't know what they're trying to do by evidence. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Right. Well, that is a really, really, really good point. I am going to say, though, that probably the majority of Christians are not going to see that disconnect, and they're going to continue with this understanding that I still have this experience. Now, I know a bunch of people who have left Christianity, and they're at various stages in their deconstruction journey, right? And there are a whole bunch of people between they've left Christianity and atheism, and there's a whole bunch of people in here, they don't know where they are, right? They don't know where they fit, and they're trying out different things. And they're trying out deism, and they're trying out spirituality and witchcraft and agnostic and, all these different things. And because they're trying to figure out, where do I go from here? Because it's a big leap from leaving Christianity to atheism. Most people don't just jump straight over there, right? And so often those people are still in this place of thinking that they're experiencing God. Even though they've left faith behind, they're still in this experience stage. And so I think it's really important, Alan, that we address why people, whether they're Christians or they're people who have left Christianity but are trying to figure out where they're going, why do people feel these kinds of things? So one big thing in Christianity is all of the religious rituals, all of the things that you do in church, whether they are, the holy roller type, and you've got all kinds of pump you up music going on, or it is the more of the almost the chanting type of music. In fact, the chanting type of music, which isn't nearly as popular these days, can be more brainwashing than anything, I think. But it makes you feel a certain way. So we've got the rituals in Reformed churches. Often, you stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down. You got a lot more of those type of rituals, and then you're going to kneel, and you're going to take the Lord's Supper at this time, and whatever you're going to call it. The Catholics and all of their Eucharist, and they've got all kinds of rituals, right? And you've got these different prayers, and sometimes the prayers are just repetitive, right? And that's going to cause you to feel something. Sometimes the prayers get really, really intense, and that's going to cause you to feel something. Sometimes the prayers are going to be accompanied by the speaking in tongues, or a word from the Lord, or an interpretation, and all that kind of stuff. That's going to cause you to feel something. Sometimes it's just the length of the prayer. And I remember thinking back to some of the Christian churches that I was in. The longer that the prayer would go, the more that I would feel God, the more that I would have that experience, right? And I remember sometimes, at the beginning, just letting my mind sometimes would wander, because I can get bored pretty easily. And then the the more that they would get into it and into it, I found myself just praying for the people that I thought were wicked people in the church. This kid was not living right for the Lord, so I'd be praying for him, and I'd be praying and praying and praying that he would go forward to the front of the church. So in Assemblies of God, this one church that we went to, at the end, when they had the prayer at the end, that prayer part was like 30 to 45 minutes long, and that pastor would keep praying till everybody in the church went up there to the altar. Everybody in the whole church. So this was like a major experience that we had every Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday, whenever we were at church, right? And they were very, very, very powerful emotional states that made us feel like we were experiencing God. We were experiencing something, right? So all of those things, music is one of the most powerful things. And any kind of repetition and any kind of chanting, all of those things are extremely powerful in helping you feel something, and they can actually manipulate you, which is why the music that they have in movies and TV shows and stuff actually manipulate you into feeling what they want you to feel. But if you go to a concert, I was going to say a word I can't say on YouTube. If you go to a concert, whoever you like, in today's world, right? And it's a 2-hour long concert, then you're going to have the same kind of feelings, the same kind of emotional things. And there are many people who will say, even at a secular concert, that they felt the Lord at this concert, right? Because they felt the same kind of feelings that they feel in church.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the same thing that's happening. The music changes your feelings. The rituals change your feelings. The group effect, the group dynamics, the energy of all of these people singing together and doing something together, whatever the ritual is that you're doing together, that actually changes you, and it gives you that emotional experience. So any churches that have more of that kind of stuff going on are going to have a lot more of those things where you feel like you're experiencing God. So those are a couple. What else do we have? Because I think it's really important for people to understand why they're feeling this way, Alan.
Yeah, no, those are really good. I suppose if you could even go the opposite way with experiences that make you sense that the Lord's presence isn't somewhere. I remember when my ex-wife and I and her side of the family, we all went to Hollywood when we were visiting her sister out there in California, and it was her mom and her brother, and then her sister and her husband, and then her grandfather. And now her grandfather was very, very legalistic, like devil cards, no movies, no dice, stuff like that. Like that.
You're going to Hollywood?
And we went to Hollywood, right? So you can already see where this is going.
Yeah.
And he already had a preconceived idea that there's nothing but evil in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
And that just was his mindset because of his upbringing and because of his belief system and, whatever it was. So I recall when we were leaving, driving out of the city, he said he looked back and he swore by it. Oh, I looked back and I saw the sign change from Hollywood to Hellywood. I kid you not. This man truly believed that he saw this. So he had an experience. God was not present in Hellywood, So what do you do with that? But that's the same type of thing. We want to believe something so badly that it creates these even sometimes visions of things that aren't real. Like, would anybody outside of him, maybe there are, I guess, people who believe those kinds of things happen, but do you really believe a sign changed, or is it just you're seeing it here? You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry, but the Hollywood sign didn't change to Hellywood. It just didn't happen. The O doesn't become an E. Maybe, but again, if it did, then I guess if I saw it, I might actually believe in Yahweh, because that'd be quite an experience. Unless David Copperfield was still alive, isn't he? I think he's dead, right? David Copperfield.
I think, but I'm not sure.
Yeah,
but
I think so.
We're almost out of time. I think there's actually a whole lot more reasons why people actually experience these type of feelings. And I'm just going to say the one thing I want to add in here real quick before we close is it's just your subconscious. Everything that we're talking about is your subconscious. If you haven't studied subconscious, well, we may talk about it some other time, but go ask ChatGPT to tell you about what is subconscious. What does it mean? What does it do? How does it impact me? And all that kind of stuff. But just before we close, you wanted to end with cumulative apologetics. So we have about 1 minute to do that, Alan.
Let me do that. I'll summarize it real quick. So cumulative apologetics, what they say is, well, and the fact that there's even an apologetic called cumulative apologetics demonstrate that none of the apologetic methods actually does the job, because if it did, why would you need cumulative apologetics? But so what ends up happening is they say, hey, none of these methods have actually done the job by themselves. What if we combine them all? Then they might do the job together. But the problem is, if you multiply 0 by 5, you still get 0. So, what cumulative, none of the methods, as we've seen, takes us beyond the 50-yard line, so to speak. I need you to take me all the way. You got to prove it 100% if you're going to say, I know that I know that I know that I know God exists. If you know that, sure, if you're that absolute, surely you can give me some evidence that is absolutely sure, that proves it without a doubt. But as it happens, all we have is pointers, and all the only people that believe these pointers are people who already believe that Yahweh exists. So if you're already there, sure, these are just supporting arguments for your position, but they do nothing for the one on the outside saying, can I have some actual evidence for the case at hand? You have yet to do anything to verify that Yahweh actually exists. You have simply your claim and a bunch of thoughts that could go either way. So what we have here is nothing but failed experiments, failed evidence, failed proof, failed nothing. There is nothing going on here that proves the existence of God in a single method of apologetics. So what I want to leave everybody with, departing from our section on apologetics in this series, is ask yourself the question, why do I believe God exists? Genuinely ask yourself that. And be honest with yourself. Do you really think that your evidence proves God exists, or is it simply supporting something you already believe? Why do you believe God exists?
And just like with any addiction that you need to quit, once the brainwashing has been removed, you just pick a time and you stop.
And we appreciate you being a part of this. We love it. Feel free to drop a comment. Be sure to subscribe and like and share this video. Let people be a part of the conversation. Drop a tip for Jen. She puts a lot of work into these every week. We're so happy to have her be in this world with us. And Jen, thank you for doing this series with me. It's been a blast so far.
It is. And if you want to join us on Facebook, we do have a community of people who have either left Christianity or are in the process of going through deconstruction. Lots of atheists there as well. And so the link is in the description below if you want to join us there. So until next time, question your faith with answers from Genesis.